Act 1. The wound. You've been trained to lose. Not explicitly, no one sat you down and said, here's how to guarantee you'll never hold real power. But they did something far more effective. They taught you that morality and power exist in the same room. They don't. Every impulse to be a good person, every moment you chose kindness over strategy, every time you bit your tongue when you should have struck, you weren't being virtuous. You were being domesticated, neutered, rendered harmless by a social contract that only applies to those without power. And here's the wound that never heals. You look around and see men of lesser character, lesser intelligence, lesser everything, sitting in positions that should be yours. They're not better than you. They're simply unencumbered by the programming that's crippling you. The good man doesn't finish last because the universe is unfair. He finishes last because goodness, as you've been taught to practice it, is a disqualification from power. It's a social sedative, a cage you've been conditioned to build around yourself while calling it a conscience. But what if the entire framework is inverted? What if Machiavelli wasn't describing how corrupt men behave, but how reality actually operates? What if your goodness isn't a virtue being tested, but a weapon being used against you? In this video, you'll learn the 7 forbidden truths Machiavelli documented about power and morality, the mechanisms that ensure good people never connect with the levers that move the world, not because they can't, but because they've been systematically programmed not to reach for them. This isn't philosophy, this is diagnosis. Act 2. The revelation. Law 1. The morality asymmetry. Your ethics are your opponent's weapon. In chapter 15 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes something that still gets him banned from university syllabi. A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil. Read that again. He's not saying be evil. He's saying the environment is predatory and unilateral goodness is suicide. Here's the mechanism. When you operate by a moral code, honesty, fairness, integrity, you become predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. And in any competitive landscape, vulnerability gets exploited. The man who keeps his word creates patterns. The man who plays by the rules broadcasts his limitations. And the moment someone recognizes you won't lie, won't manipulate, won't betray, they've just been handed a roadmap to control you. Psychological breakdown. Human beings don't respect goodness, they respect power. Goodness is only admired when it's backed by the capacity for violence that's being restrained. A good man with no teeth isn't respected, he's managed. Modern application. You're in a negotiation. You decide to be transparent about your budget constraints because you value honesty. The other party now knows exactly how little you'll accept. You've just negotiated against yourself in the name of virtue. Or you refuse to engage in office politics because you believe merit should speak for itself. Meanwhile, someone less qualified is managing perceptions, building alliances, and controlling the narrative. When promotion time comes, they've already won a game you refused to acknowledge was being played. The morality asymmetry isn't just real, it's the primary mechanism by which power redistributes itself from the principled to the pragmatic. But that's not even the deepest layer, because it's not just that your morality makes you vulnerable. Law 2. The guilt installation. Good is a control system, not a character trait. Here's what they never tell you. The moral framework you're operating within wasn't designed to make you virtuous. It was designed to make you compliant. Machiavelli observed something that modern psychology would later confirm. Guilt is the most effective cattle prod ever invented. It requires no external enforcement. Once installed, the subject polices himself. Think about the language. Good person, not effective person, not powerful person. Good, like you're a child being evaluated for obedience. And what behaviors does goodness demand? Selflessness, ignore your interests. Humility, suppress your ambition. Fairness, handicap yourself to make others comfortable. Forgiveness, absorb damage without retaliation. Notice a pattern. Every virtue requires you to decrease your competitive capacity, to make yourself smaller, to volunteer for weakness. Historical context. When Machiavelli was writing The Prince, he was living in a Florence torn apart by competing powers. He watched good rulers, men who wanted to be loved, who governed with Christian virtue, get devoured by ruthless neighbors who understood that leadership isn't a popularity contest, it's a survival mechanism. The Medici family didn't dominate Florence through goodness, they dominated through strategic ruthlessness. Masked by cultural patronage, they understood the game, the virtuous rulers who opposed them, footnotes in history books. Psychological breakdown. Guilt is an implanted operating system. Someone somewhere in your developmental arc taught you that wanting power is wrong, that ambition is selfishness, that outmaneuvering others is immoral. Who benefits from you believing this? Not you. The people already holding power benefit, because every moment you're paralyzing yourself with ethical deliberation, they're moving. Modern application, you have an opportunity to advance your career, but it means someone else won't get the promotion. A good person hesitates, feels guilt about the zero-sum nature of advancement. Meanwhile, your competitor has no such hesitation. They're already positioning, networking, subtly undermining your reputation. When they get the position, was the universe rewarding their lack of ethics? No, the universe doesn't have ethics. It rewards whoever takes action unencumbered by self-imposed handicaps. Your guilt isn't protecting anyone. It's just ensuring your resources get redistributed to people who don't share your limitations. Wait until you see Law 3. This is where most people realize they've been playing a completely different game than they thought. Law 3, the virtue signal trap. Goodness performed is power surrendered. Machiavelli makes a critical distinction that destroys modern moral posturing. It is unnecessary for a prince to have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. Read that again. He's not saying be virtuous. He's saying control the perception of virtue. The trap, you've been taught that authentic goodness, goodness performed publicly, goodness that cost you something, is the highest form of character. It's not. It's the highest form of status forfeiture. Here's the mechanism. Every time you demonstrate goodness that others can witness, you're engaged in a transaction. You're spending power currency to purchase social approval, and that transaction only works when you're operating in a low-stakes, high-trust environment. The moment stakes increase, real competition, genuine scarcity, serious power dynamics, public goodness becomes a liability, because it signals you're playing for approval, not victory. Psychological breakdown, human beings are status monitoring machines. We're constantly asking, who's strong, who's weak, who can I dominate, who do I need to submit to? When you visibly sacrifice your interests for others, you're answering that question. I'm lower status, my needs are less important, I can be imposed upon. You think you're building social capital, you're actually advertising compliance. Modern application, you're in a team meeting. Someone pitches an idea you know won't work, but they seem emotionally invested. The good person impulse, stay silent or offer gentle support to preserve their feelings. Result, the bad idea moves forward, time and resources get wasted, and when the failure happens, are you credited for your kindness? No, you're implicated in the failure because you were there and said nothing. Or worse, you do speak up later, and now you're the villain who wasn't a team player, or could have said something earlier. The man who spoke the hard truth immediately, even if it stung, positioned himself as the authority. The man who prioritized being liked positioned himself as the subordinate. The inversion, Machiavelli's genius, was recognizing you should appear virtuous while acting pragmatically. The truly powerful cultivate a reputation for fairness and integrity, then operate with ruthless calculation behind that mask. The powerless do the opposite. They advertise their limitations through performative goodness, then wonder why no one respects them. That's Law 3 of 7. And the next one is even more dangerous because it reveals why your empathy is being weaponized against you. Law 4, the empathy exploit, your compassion is their entry point. Machiavelli wrote, men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. What he understood, empathy, your capacity to feel what others feel, is a vulnerability vector. And in any adversarial environment, vulnerabilities get exploited. Here's the wound. You were taught that empathy is strength, that understanding others, caring about their pain, making space for their struggles, these are evolved human capacities. They are, but evolution didn't prepare you for a world where empathy is strategically weaponized. The mechanism, someone approaches you with a sob story, a personal struggle, an emergency, your empathy activates, you feel compelled to help. In that moment, your decision-making is compromised. You're not evaluating the situation strategically, you're responding emotionally. And that's the exploit, because the person who triggered your empathy may not be operating in goo. Faith, they may have identified you as someone whose empathy can be activated to produce a desired outcome. Psychological breakdown, empathy evolved in small, high-trust tribal environments where everyone knew everyone. Compassion for group members increased group survival. But in modern, low-trust, high-scale environments, empathy becomes a liability, because you're extending tribal trust behaviors to people who don't operate by tribal rules. The socially calibrated manipulator, the dark triad personality, doesn't feel the empathy response that's constraining you. They simulate it. They've learned that appearing vulnerable, appearing to struggle, produces resources from empathetic targets. You think you're being compassionate, you're being farmed. Modern application, an employee comes to you with a personal crisis. They need time off, special accommodations, emotional support. Your empathy activates, you want to help. Meanwhile, their performance has been declining for months. They've missed deadlines, created problems for the team. The good person response, extend grace, make accommodations, put the human first. The strategic response, recognize this may be a pattern. Compassion without boundaries trains people to use your empathy as a shield against accountability. 6 months later, the same employee is still underperforming, now with a documented history of special circumstances that make them effectively untouchable. Your empathy didn't help them, it enabled dysfunction. And your team has been carrying dead weight because you confused kindness with leadership. The dark truth, the most effective manipulators are empathy farmers. They've learned to identify empathetic people, trigger their compassion response, and extract resources. Your goodness isn't connecting you to power, it's making you a resource for people who understand power. We're only at Law 4. The next 3 are where Machiavelli stops being philosophical and starts being surgical. But first, you need to understand why niceness is the slowest form of social suicide. Law 5, the niceness paradox, conflict avoidance is respect destruction. Chapter 19 of The Prince, it is much safer to be feared than loved. This isn't cruelty, it's observation. Machiavelli watched rulers who prioritized being loved, who avoided conflict, who sought consensus, who made everyone comfortable, and he documented a pattern. They got destroyed, not by external enemies, by internal betrayal. The mechanism, when you avoid conflict to preserve relationships, you're not building goodwill, you're building contempt. Here's why human beings respect boundaries, not stated boundaries, enforced boundaries. When you consistently fail to enforce boundaries because you want to keep the peace, people learn something about you, you can be pushed, you will absorb damage, you prioritize their comfort over your interests. And once they learn that, the relationship fundamentally changes. You're no longer an equal, you're a resource to be managed. Psychological breakdown, respect and fear exist on the same spectrum. You don't have to be cruel, but you must be capable of consequence. The moment others realize you won't create consequences, won't fire, won't walk away, won't retaliate, you've surrendered all leverage. The nice person thinks they're building trust. They're actually teaching people that boundaries are negotiable and disrespect is cost-free. Historical example, Pope Julius II, Machiavelli's contemporary, was anything but nice. He led armies personally, threatened kings, destroyed enemies without hesitation, and he's remembered as one of the most powerful popes in history. Meanwhile, countless gentle rulers of that era, footnotes, not because they lacked virtue, because they lacked teeth. Modern application, your friend constantly cancels plans last minute, borrows money without repaying, shows up late, disrespects your time. The good person response, say nothing, maybe hint at the issue, definitely don't create conflict, you value the friendship. Result, the behavior continues, worsens, because you've taught them your boundaries are decorative, and one day you realize the friendship is entirely one-directional. They take, you give, and if you ever stop giving, they'll simply move to their next resource. You didn't preserve the friendship through niceness, you destroyed your own position through boundary collapse. The inversion, the man who enforces boundaries, who says no, who creates consequences, who demonstrates he'll walk away, is respected, not because he's cruel, because he has standards. People don't love weakness, they exploit it, and they disguise that exploitation as friendship, as need, as relationship, while systematically extracting value from someone too good to recognize the pattern. That's Law 5 of 7. The next one reveals why your transparency is the knife in your own back. Law 6, the transparency trap. Authenticity is a handicap in adversarial systems. Machiavelli, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. The modern world has sold you a lie wrapped in self-help language. Be authentic, be vulnerable, show your true self. And in certain contexts, intimate relationships, high-trust friendships, this is beautiful. But in competitive, adversarial, or political environments, authenticity is self-sabotage. The mechanism, every piece of information you reveal, your fears, your weaknesses, your true motivations, your pressure points, is ammunition. The person receiving that information may not use it immediately, but in a competitive landscape they're filing it away. The authentic person thinks they're building connection. They're actually conducting vulnerability reconnaissance on themselves and broadcasting the results. Psychological breakdown, strategic opacity, the ability to control what others know about you is a core power skill. It's not dishonesty, it's operational security. The powerful understand you can be genuine with 5 people. Everyone else gets a curated version optimized for their perception management. The powerless invert this. They're performatively authentic with everyone, then wonder why their weaknesses keep getting exploited. Modern application, you're in a competitive work environment. During a team-building exercise, everyone's encouraged to be vulnerable and share their struggles. The good person shares authentically, talks about imposter syndrome, family stress, confidence issues. The strategic person shares calibrated vulnerability, something humanizing but not exploitable, maintains strategic opacity on actual pressure points. 6 months later, you're in competition for a promotion. Suddenly, whispers start circulating about your confidence issues and personal struggles. Nothing directly attributed to anyone, just information that somehow got into the ecosystem. Your authenticity didn't build trust, it built a dossier. The dark pattern, organizations, social groups, even friendships often pressure you to be more open, more real, more vulnerable. This is framed as emotional health, sometimes it is. But often, it's information extraction disguised as intimacy, and the information flows one direction, from you to the environment, where it becomes permanent leverage. Machiavelli understood, the powerful appear authentic while remaining strategically opaque. The powerless are authentically transparent while remaining strategically blind. That 6 of 7, the final law, is the one that makes everything else make sense, because it reveals the core mechanism that ensures good people never hold power. Law 7, the virtue cage, morality, is a class system that protects existing power. Here's the forbidden truth Machiavelli documented that still gets people uncomfortable. Moral systems aren't discovered, they're designed, and they're designed by whoever holds power to preserve that power. Look at who benefits from your virtue. Your honesty makes you predictable, easier to outmaneuver. Your fairness makes you self-handicap, reducing your competitive advantage. Your empathy makes you exploitable, turning you into a resource. Your niceness makes you boundaryless, inviting disrespect. Your authenticity makes you transparent, creating vulnerability. Your guilt makes you self-police, requiring no external control. Every single virtue you've been taught to practice makes you less dangerous, less competitive, less powerful. And who teaches these virtues, who enforces them, who punishes deviation? The already powerful. Historical context. Machiavelli watched the Catholic Church, the dominant power structure of his time, preach poverty, humility, and obedience to the masses, while the church itself accumulated land, wealth, and political control through ruthless calculation. The powerful prescribed virtue for the governed while exempting themselves from the same standards. This isn't hypocrisy, it's strategy. Psychological breakdown. Morality functions as a domestication technology. It's not that powerful people are immoral. It's that they recognize morality as a tool, something to be deployed strategically, not internalized as identity. The good person has made morality their identity, which means violating it feels like self-destruction. They've locked themselves in a cage and thrown away the key, then wondered why they can't reach the levers of power just outside the bars. Modern application. You notice corruption in your organization. A senior leader is taking credit for others' work, playing favorites, subtly destroying rivals. The good person feels outrage, reports through proper channels, believes the system will self-correct because that's what they've been taught good organizations do. Result: the complaint gets filed, investigated, and somehow nothing changes, except now you're marked as not a team player. The corrupt leader remains, you don't. Why? Because you believed the moral framework was real, that virtue gets rewarded, that justice is systemic, but the framework is aesthetic. It exists to make the power structure appear legitimate while operating by completely different rules. The person who recognized the game, they didn't report, they documented, built alliances, waited for the strategic moment, and when they moved with leverage, not idealism. The final truth: you're not losing power struggles because you're good and they're bad. You're losing because you're playing by rules they never agreed to follow. You're operating within a moral framework that was given to you as a control mechanism, while they're operating in reality, where power flows to whoever can take and hold it. Machiavelli wasn't teaching immorality, he was teaching you to see the game, to recognize that virtue, as you've been taught to practice it, is a disqualification from power, not because power is evil, but because the powerful have convinced you that reaching for it is. Act 3, the transformation. So here's where we are. You've been operating in a paradigm where goodness and power can coexist. They can't, not the goodness you've been taught, not in systems that reward strategic action over moral posturing. The shift isn't from good to evil, it's from naive to awake. You are no longer someone who confuses virtue with strategy. You are no longer someone who mistakes domestication for character. You understand now that every moral impulse that makes you good in the eyes of a system makes you harmless to that system. Machiavelli ends The Prince with a call to action disguised as philosophy. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Translation: power isn't waiting for you to deserve it. It's waiting for you to be willing to grasp it unencumbered by the programming that's kept you small. This doesn't mean abandon ethics. It means recognize that ethics are tools, not identities. The powerful are ethical when it serves them, they're ruthless when required, and they don't agonize over the transition because they never internalize the cage. You've spent your life being good in a system that rewards strategy. You've been authentic in environments that exploit transparency. You've been empathetic with people who mistake kindness for weakness. And every day you continue operating this way, you're not being virtuous, you're being compliant. If this resonates with the part of you that's tired of watching less capable, less ethical, less everything people hold the positions that should be yours, you know what to do. The game doesn't change because you finally see it, but you change, and in a world of blind players, the man who can see is king. Power doesn't corrupt, power reveals. It reveals who is always willing to take it and who is always going to make excuses for why they couldn't. Machiavelli knew which one survives. So do you now.